Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Molly, and today we're out in the garden and we're going to do a couple of different projects, and I wanted to show you those. It's going to be two different videos. It's going to be about planting seeds for a fall garden, but before we do that and before I do that video, we have to prepare the soil, and I made a discovery about my garden and I'm going to talk to you about that. Before we do that, I'm going to give you a quick tour of what is growing in my garden. So the first thing I wanted to show you is my failure, I think it's a failure, of the potatoes. Now, I've dug up one of them. The potatoes are really tiny. I've had to hand water this, and I'm not very good at remembering to hand water, so I don't think they got enough water. I don't think this is the actual dieback that they do, when the potatoes are ready. So next year, if I decide to grow potatoes in here, I am going to have to put in an automatic watering system. Now the potatoes over on this side have gotten more water. They get watered by this little sprinkler head here that goes off twice a week, which is not enough water for potatoes. So we'll see how those look when we dig them up, and I will do a video about harvesting my potatoes. And you can see the good, the bad, the ugly. Hopefully it's good though. Now here's a little update on my tomatoes. We did an experiment at the beginning of the year where we put half the tomatoes in walls of water and half just in the soil when it was time to plant them around Mother's Day. Now in the beginning, the tomatoes that were in the walls of water looked like they did a lot better, but the tomatoes that were planted in the ground caught up. They're all producing tomatoes and we're harvesting them about the same time. I just went through and harvested some. We've got some of my, oh, see the cute little spider. It is weaving its web. This is one of my garden predators who's out here to help me. I hope I didn't scare her too much. Nope, she's still making her web. I love that. Anyway, we have some sun gold tomatoes that are so good. I love those cherry tomatoes. We've got some more ripe Jetstar tomatoes down here. We've been harvesting, quite a few of them so far. Let me show you this little baby spider again. Yeah, I don't know if we call this an orb web or a cat face spider, but it's one of the big ones that you don't like to have hit you in the face, but who are really good at keeping down all the garden pests. We do have some squash that sprouted. They're looking pretty good. I think it's probably time for me to start hitting it with a 7. I have not used insect control on squash plants before, so I'm not exactly sure when is the time to start using it, but I'm going to start using it now because I've seen squash bugs. So that's probably the time when you start using it. Kale is still beautiful and bitter. Got a caterpillar of some sort eating them. Swiss chard is being eaten also by something and by us. The paprika peppers are doing well. They're not ripening yet. I don't know when they ripen. This is the first time I've grown them in Utah, but we've got some good peppers in here. Oh, there's some red ones down there. I'll probably try and harvest those. Hopefully they're okay. The cucumbers are gorgeous. And look. And there, we're starting to get cucumbers. We're going to start harvesting this here shortly. These are the Marketmore cucumbers, which are my favorite. The dill, the seed heads are ready to be harvested so that we can do pickles. I'm really excited about pickles. Those are my favorite. More sun gold cherry tomatoes with a lettuce that's going to seed. It attracts pollinators and it's going to reseed itself for next year. And we've had fantastic harvests of banana peppers, and it looks like they're ready to harvest again. I've been making pickled banana peppers, and that is one of my favorite. I love it. We have got some bunching onions there, and this is where we're going to be doing our project in just a little bit. This is where I harvested my onions, and we're going to plant some crops for the fall season. There's one of my ground cherries. We're going to do a ground cherry plant of the week video here shortly. We're going to plant some more things here. Strawberry patch is going to have to be torn out and start over. We got very few strawberries this year. I need to redo the soil in this bed and plant new strawberries. It should do better next year once I do that. Big old ground cherry over there. And they are extremely late this year, but we have got some hemorrhoid grapes. They're still a little sour, but they've got that really good flavor. You may pucker your, oh, dang it, they're really sour. But I think we're days away from them sweetening up. So I'm really excited about the harvest for that. So now we're going to move on to the actual purpose of this video. Now, a few weeks ago, I did a video on seeds that I planted when I planted the squash that had, already sprouted up there. But the other bed that I planted in, absolutely nothing sprouted but two zinnias. I'd planted a bunch of beets, some marigolds, chard, kale, a bunch of different things, and nothing sprouted. And I was wondering what was going on, and I've also had other issues with my garden that I have not had in the past. Normally, in my raised beds, I've been very proud that I've only had to water 3 times a week. But this year, everything has completely changed, and I've had to hand water every single day, even though my irrigation goes off 3 times a week and waters for an hour and a half. It watered this morning, and the ground is still really dry. I've looked at the irrigation and it's working. It's just that the beds are drying out so much faster than they've ever dried out before. And I was trying to figure out what was going on, and then I realized that I was missing something in my garden maintenance that I used to do all the time, and I think made the world of difference, and I'm going to show you what that is. So normally when I fill up my beds, I do a mixture of equal parts vermiculite, peat moss, and compost. But the last 2 years, I have just been adding compost with no vermiculite and peat moss. And I think that is why they are starting to dry out really heavily. And let's look at the bag of what I've been using and show you why. So if you turn this bag around, yes, I'm a weakling. If you look at the ingredients, it's got bark, compost, redwood core, which should hold water, but not that much. And there's pumice for drainage, earthworm castings, all really good stuff, but nothing that really holds water. So what I need to do is go back in, take this huge bag of vermiculite and start mixing that in. Now, what is vermiculite, you'd ask? If you've ever heard of mica, it's kind of like mica. It comes out of the ground, they heat it up, kind of like they do the perlite. It expands and it really holds a ton of water and slowly releases it. So I think that is the missing ingredient right there. I also normally add peat moss. Now I've stopped adding peat moss because it is, here's my peat moss, sorry about that. Now I stopped adding peat moss because it is a non-renewable resource. It doesn't renew very easily. Peat moss is ancient plants that that were in bogs that people have been stripping clean. So I don't really like to use peat moss, but coconut coir is really expensive and you can't find big bags of it, at least where I am. So we're going to be adding more peat moss, and I don't do this yearly. I do this every, maybe even every 4 years probably would be enough, I guess. But I haven't added it for a long time. So we're going to try and add some now. So I'm going to set up my camera. We're going to add the compost, the vermiculite, and the peat moss into this bed where the onions were. And then I've already added the compost, so we're going to add the vermiculite and the peat moss to this bed. And then in our next video, we're going to show you which seeds we're going to plant. We got all that watered in, so let me show you a little bit closer what it looks like when it has vermiculite in it. So this is what the soil looks like when it has vermiculite in it. It's kind of shiny, looks a little bit like gold. Makes me feel rich. No, not really. But we're going to be rich in plants if this works like I think it will. So let me show you this soil over here before we add everything to it, and then I'll show you afterwards. So you can see there's no visible vermiculite left over. I think the last time I added it was 5 years ago. A little bit of plant debris, but that'll all disappear. So we're going to add our compost, peat, and vermiculite, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Here is the garden bed, all ready for planting. And our next video will be about planting the seeds and how I'm going to try and keep the moisture in these beds. Now there are many ways you can fill your garden beds. I would not do it with just regular topsoil alone. The topsoil doesn't seem to work as well in raised beds. There's ready-made bagged mix for raised beds, and I did use one of those. It seemed to dry out really a lot. So look at the package, see if there's peat moss in it, add some vermiculite, and see if you can get your beds to hold water a little bit longer. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe, share it with your friends, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.